What if you were swallowed by a whale? Imagine, you're on a small boat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The sky is a radiant blue. The sun shimmers over the endless water. Everything seems peaceful. Then the sea below begins to rumble. A sudden shadow, immense and moving fast, appears beneath your vessel. Before you can react, the water erupts like a volcanic explosion. A gaping mouth, wide enough to fit a truck, opens before you. It's a whale, and you're directly in its path. You scream, but it's too late. The darkness swallows you whole. What happens next? What if you were swallowed by a whale? Let's start by identifying which whale might even be capable of such a feat. Contrary to the tales of Jonah or the exaggerations of Pinocchio, most whales couldn't swallow a human, even if they tried. Their throats simply aren't built for it. Baleen whales like humpbacks or blue whales have throats too narrow, barely wider than a grapefruit. These gentle giants feed on tiny krill and plankton, not humans. But one whale stands out, the sperm whale, with a head that can reach 20 feet long and a mouth large enough to accommodate a standing human. The sperm whale is the only known whale capable of technically swallowing a person whole. Its esophagus can stretch up to 50 centimeters, just large enough, in theory, for a human to squeeze through. And its stomach, big enough to hold several hundred kilograms of squid, or say, a 75-kilogram human. So for the sake of this hypothetical nightmare, let's assume you're face to face with a sperm whale. And let's say it doesn't bite you in half or spit you out in confusion. It swallows you whole. Let's go inside. You slide down the whale's slick, muscular throat. The temperature rises. It's humid, oppressively so. The walls of the esophagus contract rhythmically, pushing you downward in powerful waves. This is peristalsis, the same involuntary muscle movement that helps you swallow food, but you're not food. You're conscious, panicking, and you're about to enter the stomach. Now, sperm whales have not one, but four stomachs, like cows, in a way. The first chamber, called the forestomach, is massive, and it's not exactly a friendly place. It's pitch black. You're encased in fleshy walls that expand and contract like the inside of a giant mussel. And then comes the acid. Stomach acids here are strong enough to break down squid beaks, the hardest part of a cephalopod. They begin corroding your skin almost immediately. You can feel a burning, stinging sensation. Your clothing offers little protection. The air is heavy with methane, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. Breathing becomes difficult. The oxygen levels are dangerously low, far below what's safe for a human. You gasp. Your heart races. You realize, if the acid doesn't kill you, suffocation will. At this point, you might be wondering, how long could you survive in here? Let's be generous. Assume there's a small air pocket somewhere in the stomach. That gives you maybe 3 to 5 minutes of breathable air. If you're trained, say, a free diver, you might stretch that to 6 or 7 minutes. But most of us, we'd be unconscious within 3. Meanwhile, the stomach acid, mostly hydrochloric acid, begins doing its job. It breaks down tissue, dissolves fat, and triggers severe chemical burns. Even brief contact can cause third-degree burns on exposed skin. And don't forget the digestive enzymes, pepsin and others, actively breaking down proteins. Your proteins. You are literally being digested alive. But it's not just acid you have to contend with. There's also pressure. Sperm whales are deep divers capable of descending over 3,000 meters beneath the surface. That's 10,000 feet. If the whale resumes its dive while you're inside, you'd face crushing pressure up to 300 times that at sea level. Your eardrums would rupture, your lungs would collapse, and your internal organs, not built for those kinds of forces. Death would be swift and silent. Let's talk biochemistry. The stomach acid in a whale's gut is about pH 1.5 to 2. That's similar to battery acid. It's there to break down tough squid meat and dissolve bones. Human tissue, especially soft tissue like skin and eyes, would begin to break down within minutes. You wouldn't even be aware of the full extent of your injuries because you'd likely be unconscious due to hypoxia. And what happens next is truly gruesome. Enzymes begin digesting your muscles, your fat, even your connective tissues. Over hours, your body would break down into simpler components, ready for absorption. In the whale's stomach, this process is aided by gastroliths, small rocks and hard materials that help grind down food. You might feel these stones pressing against you, slowly turning you into slurry. Eventually, you become nutrients, Your atoms, once part of a person, are now part of the whale. But wait, could you actually survive being swallowed by a whale? Astonishingly, there are stories, some legendary, some possibly real, of people who claim they did. The most famous is the story of James Bartley, an English sailor allegedly swallowed by a sperm whale in the late 1800s and found alive in its stomach a day later. According to the tale, when the whale was harpooned and its carcass cut open, the crew found Bartley inside, unconscious but alive. His skin was bleached white from the acid, and he was blind from the darkness, but he lived. Historians have largely debunked this story. There's no official record, no confirmed ship logs. Most likely, it's a seafaring myth. But the idea persists. Let's say, just for fun, you're swallowed in just the right way. You land in an air pocket. The whale doesn't dive. The acid doesn't hit you immediately. You have a waterproof suit, maybe even a small oxygen tank. Now you've bought yourself minutes, maybe an hour. But survival still depends on one thing: getting out. Is there a way out? Through the front? Unlikely. The esophageal muscles are one-way streets, and you're not strong enough to push through them. The whale isn't going to vomit you out voluntarily, unless it gets sick. But what about the other end? In theory, you could ride the digestive tract all the way to the exit. But this is a long, painful process. The trip through the whale's intestines could take 12 to 18 hours. That's more than enough time to dissolve most of your soft tissue. Even if you did make it out alive, would you want to? You'd emerge bleached, burned, possibly blind, and extremely traumatized, but alive. The idea of being swallowed by a whale has captivated humanity for centuries. From Jonah to Geppetto, it represents a kind of living hell, imprisonment inside a living creature, helpless and doomed. But it also symbolizes something deeper. Rebirth, emerging from the belly of the beast, is a classic metaphor in mythology. It's the hero's descent into darkness before transformation, the lowest point before redemption. In real life, being swallowed by a whale is more likely to end in tragedy than transformation. But it's the story, the metaphor, that survives. It's about facing the impossible, the unknowable, the crushing weight of nature, and the fleeting fragility of life. And maybe, just maybe, the hope that something incredible waits on the other side of the darkness. You won't likely be swallowed by a whale, but if you are, hold your breath. Hope for a miracle, and remember, even in the deepest darkness, stories can bring us back to the light.